Hi, Professor Gronlund here. I have some introductory comments about the cardiovascular system and the blood more specifically to prepare you for your learning objectives. The cardiovascular system consists of the blood vessels, and the heart. In the broadest terms, the function of this system is to deliver nutrients, including oxygen, to the cells of the body, and to take waste products, including carbon dioxide, away from the cells. We're going to discuss more specific functions as we work our way through the system. In this video, we're going to focus on the blood. After a general introduction, we'll discuss the properties and specific functions of each component of the blood. Now, I'm sure that everyone's somewhat familiar with the properties of blood. You've cut yourself, and when you're bleeding, you've noticed that it's red in color, it's a liquid, it's warm, it's sticky. You've probably had blood drawn at some point in your life and seen the results, so you know that there are typical values for these substances like sugar and nitrogen and calcium in the blood. Those typical values are given in the appendix of your textbook, and these types of tests can be very useful in diagnosing disorders. The blood has three major functions: transportation, homeostasis, and protection. The blood is the liquid that flows through the vessels, transporting gases and nutrients and wastes and hormones and antibodies and clotting factors, etc., throughout the body. Because cells cannot live long without that nutrient oxygen, or with the accumulation of waste products like carbon dioxide, that continual flow of blood is essential to life. A second role is homeostasis. Two examples here include temperature and pH. Our normal body temperature is somewhere around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and that continual flow of warm blood through the body helps to facilitate that condition. As far as pH goes, blood buffers are one of the components that maintains the blood pH at 7.35 to 7.45. The chemical reactions in our bodies are very sensitive to pH, so maintaining that small range is essential. In fact, we begin to have neurological symptoms when it swings just not far outside that range. The blood pH is maintained by the blood buffers, which we mentioned, but also the rate of respiration and the urinary system. So you've probably guessed we'll be discussing blood pH a few times throughout the course. A third major function is protection. The blood circulates the white blood cells and the antibodies, which are essential for our immune system, but it also circulates the platelets and clotting factors, which protect us from uncontrolled bleeding. If you spin blood in a centrifuge, it separates into a liquid portion, the plasma, and formed elements. Formed elements are cells and cell fragments. The plasma itself is basically water with substances dissolved in it. The formed elements include the white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. All three of these are made in the red bone marrow, and their production is under hormonal control. The number of red blood cells and platelets remains relatively constant, but the white blood cell will fluctuate when there's an active immune response occurring. Let's take a closer look at each of those three formed elements. The function of the red blood cells, that is the erythrocytes, is to carry oxygen from the lungs to the body cells so that they have it available to make ATP via cellular respiration. They also carry a small portion of the carbon dioxide produced during cellular respiration back to the lungs. The structure of the red blood cells is a beautiful demonstration of the relationship between form and function. Red blood cells are small, the exact size to move through the capillaries one at a time. They're flat in shape to facilitate very fast diffusion. Remember that the rate of diffusion is dependent on the distance needed to travel. A round cell would result in much slower diffusion of gases. During formation of the red blood cells, the nucleus and most all of the rest of the organelles are extruded from the cell, hence that flat shape, but also no mitochondria to use up the oxygen before it can get delivered. Red blood cells are basically just sacks of hemoglobin, the molecule that oxygen actually attaches to. We use a tremendous amount of oxygen to make ATP every minute of every day. White blood cells are for immunity. They have two very unique properties, chemotaxis and diapedesis. Chemotaxis means that they move towards chemical signals, and diapedesis means that they can move between the vessel system and the body tissues. These cells are generally categorized as granulocytes or agranulocytes. Some will use chemical weapons, others will be phagocytic. Each type of white blood cell has a slightly different role in immunity. For example, eosinophils are important in fighting parasitic worms. Monocytes are involved with viral and bacterial infections. We'll take a closer look at the lymphocytes, that is, the T cells and B cells, in depth when we get to the immune system chapter. Platelets used to be called thrombocytes, but cyte implies cells, and these are just cell fragments. Platelets are responsible for blood clotting, or hemostasis. Hemostasis involves 3 sequential steps: the vascular spasm, a platelet plug, and then coagulation. So first, the smooth muscle in the vessel wall contracts to temporarily stop the flow until the platelets can attach to the wall, swell, and make a temporary plug. Coagulation involves soluble fibrinogen being converted to insoluble fibrin, which will actually seal the vessel until repair can occur. After that repair, then the clot will be dissolved using plasmin. The blood chapter also covers blood typing, both the ABO blood groups and the Rh factor groups. It will also cover the disorders with having too many or not enough of each of the formed elements. These topics will be of interest to those of you going into health occupations. Well, that should get you started. As you work through those chapter learning objectives, please contact me with your questions. I'll talk to you again soon.